I want to give you the heads up that this episode digs into the topic of abuse, so if you'd prefer to not have your kids listening, now would be a good time for earbuds. Thanks. We each took a seat as HR handed out pamphlets of paperwork and suggested we go around the table starting with one fun fact about ourselves. Across from me sat the most graceful woman I'd ever seen. I couldn't decide if she'd frolicked fresh off the moors of Ireland or walked right out of a lullaby. Either way, there was some melancholy glimmer behind her clear blue eyes. She wore a patchwork skirt with fur-lined hiking boots underneath and tucked her feathery blonde hair behind her ear as she mentioned, "Well, I do rough water swimming." I wasn't expecting that, but that was my introduction to Lynn. We were in a show together for 2 months, but I never did get the full story behind that fun fact until recently when I gave her a phone call. Listen in on my conversation with Lynn as she reveals how this whole swimming thing began.
I started swimming as I called it, beating up the water. It was my therapy. Because I had suffered in silence for so long as an abused woman, an abused wife. And so I had left my ex-husband, and that was such a huge experience for me in that it was scary and it was difficult because even though you may be in an abusive relationship, you have a history with that person, you may have children with that person, and it's not abusive 24/7. It's not abusive all the time, but there were moments that you never knew when he would go into a rage. And so I lived in fear and I lived in silence because I took on the abuse as if it was partly my fault. And I was also ashamed. So there's all these feelings that go into being an abused person. It's, you're afraid that you have a real sense of low self-esteem because the person is constantly, your abuser is constantly putting you down. When I left him, there were all these feelings and this intensity of these feelings inside of me. And I was trying to survive as a single mom. And I was still scared, living in fear because my ex-husband actually ended up in jail. And that was hard to accept as well, because even though you haven't done anything wrong, a part of you feels like you've put them in jail, So you have this experience with somebody, and I was sad for him. I was sad for him, and so I had to go to I had to go to court, and that was scary for me because I didn't know what the outcome, and all these feelings are so mixed up together. So started swimming many laps, and also it was good for my son, who was 10 at the time, and I would let him paddle around in the water. Every night we would go to the pool, and he would paddle around. It would make us both tired so we could swim. So we could sleep. So so that's what we would do. And then I started wanting to do things that I was afraid of. And so there were many things that I never thought I could do. One was to start auditioning in New York. And that was scary for me because the thought was, if I could survive an abusive husband, surely I can do all those other things I'm afraid of. So I started going and it was, part of it was to conquer the fear that I'm not good enough. Going into New York, I decided to finish my degree, my college degree. I only had a few courses left. And so I took courses that had nothing to do with music because that's what I needed. So I ended up having to take anatomy and geology. I needed science courses. And I was so afraid because I scraped the money together to pay for those.
I was going to say, you were a single mom at this time. You're a single mom. And how soon was this after you had left him?
It was within a year. 2 years, within 2 years. Yeah. So I scraped together the money, and I was so afraid that I would fail and have to pay for it again that I actually got 2 A's in classes because I was so scared that I went like over and above to pass these classes.
Yeah.
And so I got my degree, and it was very emotional because I walked down, to get my my degree, and my parents were there, and my son was there, and I didn't realize it was going to be so emotional after all those years that I was finally able to finish that.
Well, can I ask how old you were when you graduated?
I was 47. So yeah, so there was this determination, to not give up. It kind of became my mantra.
Yeah.
And then I found out about this race through my sister-in-law, who was a triathlete and who was also swimming, and she asked if I wanted to do it. And I thought, sure, I'll do. It's a mile swim in the ocean.
Yeah, why not?
Like, sure.
Why not?
So I started, training in a pool.
Okay.
And I did some swimming in the ocean. My parents had a place that they got for a couple weeks, and so I did some swimming. But I didn't realize I had never been in a swim before. There were so many people that when you dive into the water, they blow the horn, you dive into the water, and there's hundreds of people, and they're swimming all around you, and they're stirring everything up so you can't see.
Oh my gosh.
And I had a moment of panic. So, because all was happening, and I said to myself, you cannot stop. You cannot give up. I thought, you are not going to give up.
Yeah.
Thought, even if you have to, do paddle yourself all the way through, even if you, swim on your back or whatever you need to do, you are going to finish this.
Wow.
So I was, you're outside of lane lines, so you have to. It's a different type of swimming. You have to swim kind of with your head up a few times to check the lane lines, and you have the waves coming, and you have, so it's a little scary. As I'm trying to get, going, I start thinking of all the past, abuse and things that are happened to me, and the fact that I was not going to give this up. I was not going to give up. So I slowly started swimming. People were passing me, and by the time I got to the second buoy, I was really swimming. I was, I had cadence, and I was breathing, and I'll never forget that I got to the next buoy, because there was a third buoy before you turn and you head back to shore, that I started praying. I first started, praying for my kids, that my kids would have healing in their lives, that they would, that they would have some resolution, that they would know that they are loved. And then I started praying for other women and men and children who have been abused, and asking that God would give them the courage to stand up for themselves, or to leave, or do whatever it needs to get safely out of oppression and into freedom. So I thought about too all the grieving process, because no matter what your situation or your relationship is with a person, there's still a grieving process, because you're leaving something.
Yeah.
You're breaking up a family that you have hopes and dreams that for me, I had hopes and dreams that I would be with the same man, and we would raise our children and have grandchildren together, and that was no more. So I was praying, and I was zipping, like, really. I started passing people. I was like, because I wasn't thinking about the danger or the scariness. I was just thinking about the freedom. I went from scared to freedom, and I think that's what's been true of most of my life, or certainly the leaving my ex-husband. I went from the danger and the scariness and everything I've done to freedom. And for me, that's what life is about, is moving out of those things. And we do things while we're scared. We don't wait till we're not scared or not afraid. We do them while we're afraid, until we experience that freedom, like, oh, I can do this and it's okay.
What else then did it kind of light up this fire of, if I can do that, then I can conquer this?
It did. I started, the auditioning was, if you've been in the audition process, it's hard because you're constantly rejected.
Yeah.
But I started getting some things. I was cast in Once, so I did national tour of Broadway show for 2 years.
Yeah, that's something.
Yeah, that is something. And for the first time in my life, I was by myself because my son was older now. My husband, I had remarried. I did remarry. That was scary for me. I didn't want to remarry. I was so afraid that I would, I'd be put in that position again. But my second marriage has been rather wonderful, so very supportive man. So that's been good. I did a show at Carnegie Hall, and I played a principal role, and that was an amazing experience as well. And right now, I don't know. I'm teaching right now in Atlanta, but I don't know what the future holds. I'm willing to try new things. And you have to be willing to, I guess the best word is fail. And not see failure. This is a lifelong lesson of not seeing failure as something bad. Failure is just a shift. Failure is a way of changing how you're going to do something. It's not the end. It's not like, oh, I failed, I'm never going to do it again.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly in auditioning, you know that.
Yeah.
You know, there's when you're constantly rejected and you keep going back.
Right.
And it's not saying, okay, I failed, I'm never going to do this again. It's never giving up. If it's something you enjoy and something you love and something that you feel called to do, then you need to just do it.
I mean, you get to the point where you know you have to leave. You have children to take care of. What's going through your mind as you're making this plan?
The biggest thing was keeping everyone safe and doing it in a way that I didn't want to leave emotionally, because I had tried to leave before, but it was in the midst of him raging. So he would a couple times I would say, I just need to go outside because I wanted to get our youngest son out so he wasn't hearing all of his raging. And he would stand by the door and not let me leave, or he would go pull plugs out of my car.
Wow.
One time I said, I just want to go outside. And, sorry, give me a minute.
Yeah.
And he punched me on the side of my head so hard that it knocked me out. So I ended up in the ER with a concussion. And I couldn't even, when it happened, it shocked me so much. I know I was in shock. I know I was in shock, and he was the one who took me to the ER because I think he was scared, but he stayed with me the entire time, and I never said a word.
Yeah.
I never said a word. So that's why I thought the plan has to be only a handful of people who I trusted knew. I didn't even tell my older kids because I thought I didn't tell them till the day before. And my youngest, I didn't say a word to him because I was so afraid that, he would say something, not meaning to, but say something. So I planned it very, very well. The day was specifically planned. I had someone help me get the things that meant something to me out of the house, which was mainly my music and my books and Dominic's things, my youngest things, and put them in storage. I packed our bags. I had our bags packed secretly for a while in case we needed to escape, because at this point my ex-husband was under a lot of stress, and he was more and more becoming very aggressive. So I had to play a game where I had to pretend that everything was all right. My dad got me a phone secretly that he didn't know about, that I hid. So I had a phone that he didn't know about. Wow. So yeah, it was really planned out. And so I didn't say anything. I left, and I decided I wasn't going to answer no matter what he said. I wasn't going to answer the phone. I was just going to let it go, to messages. So when I finally, there were like 32 messages left on the phone.
Wow.
And I had to meet with my brother's a state trooper at the time. And so there were other things I won't go into that were happening, and he wanted me to meet with a local detective.
Mm-hmm.
So I met with him and had him play the messages, and I had to sit with him and listen to them.
Wow.
And it was so hard because it was abusers can be very manipulative, at least
Mm-hmm.
mine was very manipulative. So it went from everything from, if you come home, I'm going to kill you, expletive,
Yeah.
or to just I just want you to come home so I can say goodbye,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to turn that over to this detective. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is just that plan
Mm-hmm.
that saved us and kept us all safe.
Mm-hmm.
I've forgiven my ex-husband. It took me a while, and there are times when it comes back. It's when he hurts my kids that it hurts me.
Yeah.
But I've really worked on forgiving him, and over time I've really let it go. I've let him go,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sad for him. I'm sad for him that he has never been able to see that he has problems and that he needs help.
Mm-hmm.
I pray for reconciliation between him and his kids, which hasn't happened. I mean, I think it would be a miracle, but it is possible that he would ask forgiveness from his kids and he would make amends with his kids. But he hasn't done that, and I'm not sure he will do that. But I do pray for that for all their sakes.
Yeah.
He has never made amends to me. He has never, said he's sorry for anything he's ever done. But I've let all that go. I really have.
Wow.
I also, it's just another story, but I also was abused as a kid for several years. And I think that's what set up also those feelings of unworthiness, of that I am, that I'm not good, that I'm not worth anything as a woman. I think those feelings were set in my childhood. So, and that brokenness, that happens that you don't know that. And back when I was a kid, it wasn't talked about.
Yeah.
And I think for most children that are abused, or at least speaking for myself, you take on the shame. You think there's something wrong with you because you can't reason it as a child. As an adult, you're like, why didn't I say something? Why didn't I say no? Well, you were a child. Your brain wasn't, and especially if it's somebody you trust, your brain isn't, your brain, it's wrong, but they're manipulating you. So I think because of those experiences, and then the experience of seeing men as, that they use me and abuse me, and that's how it should be, has caused in me a way of seeing the brokenness in others.
So when did music and theater enter your life?
Well, music entered my life when I was born, because my mom's a musician and a music teacher, and it was just absorbed. It was like if you were brought up in a Spanish household and they were speaking, Spanish, and you were absorbing that because that's what was being spoken. So in my family, it was music was constantly being spoken. Looking back, I think it was the expression of music that was my lifesaver, because all the feelings that I had to stuff down came out in my music, and to this day comes out. And I've had people say, and I don't know, I don't plan on doing this or try to do it, but I've had people to this day say that when they hear me sing, it sounds so vulnerable that they want to cry. As my husband now says, it's so authentic, and because you just do it. It's not as I try to do it, or it's an authenticity that is so deep in my soul when I sing. I think if you were to take music away from me, you'd be taking part of my soul away, because it's so knit with me. Music is so knit. But yeah, the auditioning didn't happen until my 40s.
Then you land this Broadway national tour, and then you're gone for what was it, 2 years? 2
years. It was, I had my summers off, but for 2 years, It was quite an experience. And yeah, I again, going to that, I saw all these fantastic, talented people and just kept looking at myself thinking, well, you're just landed. I don't know why they chose you.
Yeah.
And I had to learn how to play the accordion, which actually I'm pretty good at now.
Oh, what a cool skill.
That was difficult. I cried a lot with that one because it's such a difficult instrument. It's so hard.
You had to learn it for the show.
I had to learn it for the show. But again, my perfectionist kicked in, and I thought, I am going to learn this if it kills me. And so I just practiced until I was able to play. And I was scared. I was scared to go up on stage and fail, at that point. Like I said, it wasn't the easiest being on tour because I did miss my family, and my parents' health, my dad's health wasn't good, and but I still believe I was absolutely meant to step out. And part of that was I needed to leave home. I was always the caretaker of everybody. And I needed for once in my life to think about, not in a selfish way, but in a healthy way of taking care of myself. And what does that mean? And who is Lynn? And what is she supposed to be in this world? And what is my relationship with God? And to have that connection. And also what it means to be by myself, which I had never experienced. I got married at a very young age. And then I was always taking care of people.
I have a real treat for you today. In today's show notes, you'll find links to some of Lynn's music. One is an album called Slumber Songs, and the other is a unique cover of The Most Wonderful Time of the Year, which she recorded as a tribute to those who are suffering around the holidays. The homeless, the abused, those who've lost loved ones. All proceeds from purchasing this song will go directly to helping those in need. You can also join our Patreon community to access my full conversation with Lynn. Music for the show is by Nathan Hall and artwork by Ashley Kretcher and Jenny Brewster. As we wrapped up our conversation, Lynn read a poem that summed up her story and gave me chills. You can read the full poem in the show notes, but I'd like to end with her reading. Thanks for listening to You Never Asked.
Our deepest fear is not that we are weak. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. But you are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.